Always good to talk to Dave Rubin, even under the most difficult of circumstances. You can find the Rubin Report on Rumble and lots of other social media platforms. Dave, what a week. Unbelievable. As we speak, Israeli forces still going house to house to see the extent of the horror that was put on them by Hamas a couple of days ago. The Gaza Strip completely cut off right now. It is horror in all directions.
Yeah, I mean, look, Paul, I love coming on the show with you every week because we usually joke about stuff and do our 90s references and talk about Seinfeld. But we are witnessing what is at the very least an attempted second Holocaust. Jews went through this sort of thing well before Israel, right? There were pogroms throughout Europe where people would enter Jewish homes and kill these people only because they were Jewish. That is exactly what is happening here. This has nothing to do with a territorial dispute. The state of Israel, the modern state of Israel, which is 75 years old, was born out of the end of the British mandate of Palestine, but there were no people known as Palestinians. There were Arabs that lived in Palestine, and there were Christians, and there were Jews. Israel is the land of Judea and Samaria. That's the real name of the West Bank. That's where Jesus of Nazareth lived. Some people might have heard of that guy. The entire history, if you were to look at the story of Hanukkah, that whether you're Jewish or not, everyone associates with Christmas time. It's the story of the Jews defending their land in the hills of Judea and Samaria. These people do not want any Jews there, period. There is no overture that Israel could make. They have made many. The quote-unquote Palestinians have been offered a state 5 times, at least in the modern years, and rejected it every single time. I see an awful lot of hack reporters who don't understand anything about history or any fact on the ground who are saying, oh, if only this 75-year-old occupation would end. Oh, I suppose they're suddenly calling for the return of the British Empire. We could go a little further back. Forget about the Brits. How about we bring in the Ottomans again? It's absolute abject insanity, and the level of destruction, of mayhem. They're actually, as I am sure you have said, and many other people on Sky, and as I've said repeatedly over the last few days, I talk for a living, and there are not words to describe what has gone on here. Beheading of children, raping women in front of their dead husbands' bodies. It is absolutely unimaginable. And from where I sit, Israel has absolutely every right. And it's not just a right, it has an absolute duty to its citizens. And I would actually argue even further to the entire Western world to end Hamas. And then the world is going to have to figure out about the tentacles related to Iran and everything else. But, when I watch these sort of liberal elites, or it's kind of coming, there aren't that many. I'm glad to say, the world has seen the images are so horrific that even the media that usually goes after Israel is pausing at the moment, because women like AOC and Ilhan Omar from our Hamas caucus here in the United States, even they've been somewhat tempered because it's hard to defend the beheading of children. But Israel has every right to do whatever it wants right now. You have a duty to your citizens to protect those people, and no other nation. Just one other thing real quick. If a bomb from Toronto landed in Detroit, America would bomb Mexico. So everyone has a right to do what they see fit to defend their citizens. And, when they said never again after the Holocaust, I think they meant it.
No, 100%. Now, let's take sort of a pause and a slight step back here, because there is horror that exists every day, but the relentlessness of what has happened in the past few days, you can tell has shaken people the world over. And something that's very different than what we first started to see in Vietnam, what we started to see a lot more of in the early days of terrorist behaviour in the early 2000s, is just the sheer amount of video, the sheer amount of raw video. Now, the news obviously shows us a certain level of sanitisation because, understandably, normal people going about their lives, there's only so much that they can or want to take in. But as people that are very connected to the internet like you and I and most people watching right now, the stuff people have been seeing in the past couple of days, I'm not arguing against its existence. I'm just saying let's pause for a second to say, my God, what people have been looking at and seeing in the comfort of Florida or Australia has been unbelievable. What, for want of a better term, smartphones and modern technology can show us that no reporter can.
It's a really strange thing that we're all going through right now. There is, as I said, words do not describe it. There's no way you nor I nor anyone can watching. I mean, babies burned alive and beheaded, like stuff that is just medieval. These are barbarians, and they deserve everything that's coming to them. But there's a bit of a catch-22 here with the internet. We need to be witness to this. When the Jews were going to the gas chambers in Europe and 6 million Jews perished, people didn't believe it, and the Nazis at least had the temerity to not want the images to get out. When we see images of Auschwitz and places like that, it's because the Nazis were documenting it for themselves. They weren't sending it out to the world. Hamas wants everybody to see this. They want to see wanton slaughter of innocent children. They want to see literally people raping women in front of their children. That's what they want. And if anyone in Australia or in the UK or in France or in the United States or anywhere else, if you think they're going to stop if they take out those Jews in the Middle East, you are crazy. They will gladly import this here. You think they're going to wipe out the Jews? So, okay, we get a second Holocaust and 8 million more Jews are dead. You think they're going to go, we did it, guys. We got rid of the Jews. And the Palestinians, who none of us really care about because we've done awful things to them too, that we're good. We're sending everything. We're going home. No, of course not. It will be the beginning of everything. So unfortunately, Israel is the tip of the spear in fighting back this thing. And I don't even know what else to say.
Something that's been happening, and you've seen it in Sydney, to a lesser extent into places like New York, London as well. I don't believe that people taking to the streets claiming to be pro-Palestinian are pro-Palestinian, they're pro-Hamas. Because, as we've talked about, the complexities, the history, all the rest of it, okay, I understand all of it, completely understand all of it, completely understand about the locking off of food and water and all of that to 2 million people in Gaza, with an average age of the population being 19. But if anyone took to the streets in the past 4 or 5 days, pretending to be about pro-Palestine, it's just garbage. It's pro-Hamas. And that is frightening, what we saw in Sydney. Frightening.
Paul, I watched the video this morning. We played it on my show today. I was appalled. I mean, the last time I was in Australia, the last thing I did was a show at the Opera House. It was one of the best days of my entire career. It was a beautiful matinee show that I did with Jordan Peterson, and then I ended a 1.5 year long tour after a wonderful time in Australia. You are right. Those people, they're not supporters of Palestine, meaning they're there because they want a state for these people that would live in peace next to Israel. There's no Israelis. There's not one Jew that lives in Gaza. They left in 2005. They left them with infrastructure and they left them with greenhouses. They demolished everything, elected a terrorist organization who then killed their opponents that they were running against. And think about it, in the last 17 or so years since that disengagement from Gaza, which, by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu warned about, he thought this was going to happen. Now, he's got his own problems because there's a catastrophic intelligence failure on his watch. But since 2005, when they disengaged, the Israelis wanted nothing to do with the place. Nobody said they always say it's the most right-wing government in Israel ever. Nobody's saying go into Gaza, let's put homes in Gaza or anything like that. They've wanted nothing to do with them. But if you are going to endlessly send people to kill us and rape us and behead us, et cetera, then eventually people are going to push back. And what a damn shame, because the Gazans, the people of Gaza are being abused by Hamas. And, they've been given billions of dollars in aid. Imagine had they built a civil society and what could have been a true Western democracy, because the world bends over backwards for these people because they think it's kind of sticking it to the Jews. They could have done that. But instead, they built an army. And by the way, yes, there are 2+ million some odd people there. They are not in an open air prison. Gaza is blockaded by Israel and Egypt, but Egypt is not opening their border. These people are clearly well fed. There are luxury hotels there and everything else. They've managed to figure out a way to have a massive army and a lot of young, well fed men who can go in and rape innocent 5-year-old girls. Right now, you're celebrating mass murder, you're celebrating wanton slaughter and everything else. You're not celebrating anyone getting a state in any way. But they always say, oh, it's just about Israel, right? It's just about Israel, those Jews over there. That's what this is about. Except in Sydney at the Opera House, you had what appeared to me to be 500 some odd people, maybe more, you guys may know the numbers, chanting "gas the Jews" and "kill the Jews." That's Holocaust level stuff. So I would say, if anything, many countries in the West have an invasion on their hands. These people are seemingly obsessed with indigenous people, right? Somehow they don't think the Jews are indigenous to Israel. Again, try to ask, was Jesus a Jew and where was he from? The Jews have been celebrating holidays that go to that land. I was just there 6 months ago for thousands and thousands of years. Every Jew for Passover says next year in Jerusalem, and have been saying that for thousands and thousands of years. But they pretend this is about Israel, and what you have now in your country, I would argue, is an invasion to a certain degree. We have an invasion in America to a certain degree. London, you think these people? It's not that they're just not stopped. Do you think they believe in any of the Western values that you believe in as an Australian? Of course not. Do you think they would gladly overthrow the Australian government if they could and enter whatever it is that their caliphate or whatever? Of course they would. They're telling it to you. So it's that you can say, okay, gas the Jews. There aren't a tremendous amount of Jews in Australia. There are some, but you got a different problem on your hands.
100%. I mean, literally, some of the signs of that protest in Sydney were about the caliphate, were about having everyone live under the most radical version of Islamic law. Also, let's talk about some of the American presidents, both current and former, and their responses in all of this. You can't imagine the world would be anywhere but a better place if somebody other than Biden was in charge. Everywhere from Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, Afghanistan, and now again what's happening in the Middle East. But you're particularly noticing that it took a little while for Obama and Clinton to come out.
Yeah, really disappointing by Barack Obama, but not surprising. I mean, I think he's the one really running the American administration at this point. Everyone knows it's not Joe Biden, so maybe it's not Barack Obama, but it's enough of his people. It took him 48 hours to post anything, and then his post on Twitter read like it was from ChatGPT, basically. Kind of said all the right things, and then kind of also said nothing at the same exact time. So that was disappointing. And by the way, he did manage to tweet in those 48 hours, just not about what had happened there. So that was kind of disappointing. Then we've got our Hamas caucus out here with Ilhan Omar and AOC and Rashida Tlaib. And these people, what they do is they wait for all of the slaughter, and then they say, and now we must call for peace, right? So your people are also, you're missing 1,000 of your people and your babies are burned. We should have peace. I mean, it's a complete farce. But again, I would say it's been really heartening, and it's only because of the barbarity of these attacks. It's been really heartening to see good people and good nations stand up and say, you know what, we're behind Israel. Like, sure, we kind of nudge them in the UN and we don't really vote for them. And yeah, we'll take their technology and whatever, they're not really threatening us like some of the other people that we're in bed with. But it's been nice to see some countries do the right thing. I think the issue now, of course, because we live in this idiotic news cycle of, it used to be a 24-hour news cycle. Now it's just how fast you can, swipe your finger news cycle, is that the images as Israel gains control of their own borders. I mean, right before I started with you, I literally saw a video from a friend in Israel who sent me, a dead woman, young girl, just burned to oblivion. Those images will go away, and the images of what's happening in Gaza will appear, and then suddenly everyone will say, oh, you must stop. But I'm telling you, they have awoken something in the Israeli people, and Hamas will be done by the end of this thing, and we'll see what other destruction there is. But I don't know what you do with the people in Gaza. I don't know how anyone should be allowed to live there anymore. You got to go to Egypt. You got to go to Egypt. You just can't stay here. Like, again, it is your duty. It is the one duty of your government in Australia to protect you. That is the main duty. Now, governments often fail. This is the ultimate test for the Israeli nation, and I suspect they will not fail it, but it's going to be painful.